I've never watched it, but I doubt if there's anything Christian about the message in that afternoon TV program. But as I looked at this passage, I thought The Young and the Restless was an appropriate title for it. Not in a bad sense, but in the sense that this passage begins by describing that youthful exuberance that will attempt almost anything, that can-do attitude. And sometimes we have a tendency when we are a little more mature to try to curb that enthusiasm, but I want to begin by suggesting to you this morning that it's really a good thing. And the world would be a much worse place were it not for that youthful enthusiasm. You know, most of these kids, or all of them, mentioned at least junior college and senior college and one a graduate degree. You know, now that I'm in my early 50s, I can't imagine embarking on an educational program that's going to take 10 or 12 years. Can you? Can you, Art? No. They can't. Not only because they most likely have the time, and no one is guaranteed tomorrow, but because of that enthusiasm and excitement and energy that comes with being young. And again, it's a good thing. And I want you to notice how the preacher begins here in verse 9. Rejoice, young man, during your childhood, and let your heart be pleasant during the days of young manhood. Have a cheerful youth. Enjoy your younger years. It is okay for kids to be kids and teens to be teens and young people to be young people. I want to hear more amens. It is all right. Even though they just sometimes do things that are a little bit silly and a little bit foolish, right? Because haven't learned yet. You know, I read about one young man. Seemed like in the story his name might have been Luke. But he saw signs that he had a mouse in his bedroom. You know, the signs that mice leave behind, right? So he found a trap, but he couldn't find any cheese. So in one of his mother's magazines, he saw a picture of cheese. So he cut it out and he put it on the trap. The next morning, he caught a paper mouse. One day, a young lady was missing school, and the phone rang in the principal's office, and the principal said, hello. And the voice on the other end said, so-and-so is going to be absent today. And the principal said, well, can I ask whom I'm speaking to? And the voice on the other end says, I'm my mother. Oh, but one of the best ones that's happened in my life recently. Christian has a learner's permit. Y'all pray for us. We were at 231, 431 here at the red light the other night, and he was in the turning lane, and the light was not orange, it was bright, 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 bright red. And there was a car there, and luckily Kathy was in the front, and he said, Mama, can I go after this car? No! You see, he got confused with right on red after stop, with left on red, and you're dead. That boy's nearly given me 3 heart attacks and 2 strokes already. But do you know why they decided back a few years ago that it was a good idea to give teenage drivers a learner's permit? Where they can learn. I mean, they don't know everything, and you know they're going to make some blunders and some mistakes, and we're going to forget and look at them and say, how foolish. Young people need to be young people. Enjoy it while you've got it. You don't need adult responsibilities. Justin, you know how much last month's utility bill was at your house? Do you have a clue? No. And he doesn't need one. Just Still a teenager, those responsibilities you don't need. But now here's the warning. Some of you probably said it. If you hadn't said it, you've thought it. Boy, I'm looking forward to being on my own and being free. Boy, are you in for a rude awakening. I keep telling Christian, I told Mark when he was younger, you're going to look back on those high school days and you're going to discover you had more freedom then than ever in your life. You don't worry about the utility bills. You leave the doors wide open. You don't worry about where the groceries come from. You just consume them, right? You don't worry about the roof leaks. You just sleep. That's fine. But time is coming when you're going to have more responsibility, but don't worry about it right now. Enjoy your youth. But secondly, have a Christian youth. And that's not to dampen your fun. You may be sitting there and say, oh, well, I just expected them to say that, And you equate Christianity with sadness and long faces. No, you see, Jesus said, I came that you might have life and have it more abundantly. Now, there's a world of folks, even adults in church, that don't really believe that. But you see, what Jesus is telling all of us is, I want you to have real, genuine life. And it is in Jesus Christ. Now, I hear you. I know that sometimes you get to church and it's just a little bit dry. Not when I'm preaching, of course, but when we have a guest preacher. Kind of like the little boy, his daddy was a preacher, and before he would preach every Sunday morning, he would bow his head and he would put his hands down in his face. And his son said, Daddy, what are you doing? He says, I'm asking God to help me preach. And he said, well, why doesn't he do it? I heard an old story years ago about a country church, and back before the days of air conditioning. They had the windows up, and their preacher was less than exciting, and he was fumbling around, and he got his notes out, and a little gust of wind come through, blew them out the window, and the old milk cow was out on the other side of the church, and she ate them and went dry. Sometimes preaching is just, it's just boring. But you know what? Who said that? I resemble that remark. But sometimes the problem's in the pew, you know it. Listening is a job, and sometimes folks don't listen. I heard of one church, it was so dead that a person had a heart attack in the middle of the service, and the EMTs carried out 3 people before they got to right one. But Jesus meant for his children to enjoy life. Now you think about it. And it's not just pie in the sky, but we have an eternal home. But just set that aside for a moment. Jesus said, I will never leave you nor forsake you. As a child of God, we are promised we will never, 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 never face any crisis, any tragedy, even a good day by ourselves. He'll always be with us. He will supply our needs. He will guide us. He will direct us. We have a reason to smile. Enjoy your younger years, but enjoy them as a child of God and act like it. Secondly, it's going to get kind of bad here, all right? Realize you're accountable. Look in verse 9 again, the latter part. He says, rejoice, young man, during your childhood, and let your heart be pleasant during the days of your young manhood. You see, they didn't know what teens were, but that's what it's describing. And follow the impulses of your heart and the desires of your eyes. And I'm going to come back to that in a moment. Yet know that God will bring you to judgment for all these things. We need to realize that we're accountable. Young people need to realize that they're accountable. You're accountable first and foremost to your parents. I like the today's English version in Proverbs. And it begins with Proverbs 25:15 like this. Kids just naturally do silly, careless things. You hear that, parents? Kids just naturally do silly, careless things. Young people, listen to the rest of that verse. But a good spanking will teach them how to behave. Well, Mom and Dad are responsible for you, and you're responsible to listen to them. Well, not now that I'm graduating from high school. I don't know about your parents, but here are my rules. You live in my house, you do what I say. Oh, I'm one of them old meanins. Makes sense to me, though, doesn't it? Makes sense to God. You know what the sixth commandment is about? Honor your father. Listen to it in its entirety. Honor your father and your mother, that your days may be prolonged in the land which the Lord your God gives you. There are three levels of promises here. I used to think when I'd read that, Mama was a little older, 42 when I was born, and so I thought she was ancient when I was just, a kid. But I thought it meant if I behave, they'll live longer. You know what? Sometimes that's true. Because you can worry your parents to death. But it's not a promise to the parents, it's a promise to the children. You want a long life? Listen to your mom and daddy. They'll save you a world of heartache and a world of hurt. I told them earlier this morning when I fell off the wagon and that thing ran over my head and my brain spilled out and they scooped them up and stuck them back in and got them all jumbled. I was in the hospital and woke up and Mama was standing over me, and I don't remember saying it. I remember this big smile on her face, but she said the first thing out of my mouth is, Mama, I've been mean. You see, she told me, don't be jumping up and down on that wagon when it's moving. You know how I fell off that trailer and spilled my brains out? I was jumping up on that wagon when it was moving. You see, if we just listened to Mom and Dad, we could avoid a lot of heartache. In the big things and in the little things. You know, things like sexual promiscuity. According to the World Health Organization, 900,000 Americans got the AIDS virus with heterosexual activity. But it's not just the big things, it's the little things as well. But there's another promise here in that sixth commandment. If you read it carefully, that your days might be long in the land that God has given you. The way to build a strong country is to begin by honoring your parents. You can write this down. If a child doesn't honor their parents, they don't honor their teachers. Right, teachers? If they don't honor their teachers, they don't honor any authority, police or otherwise. But most importantly, they don't honor God. They just run wild. You see, it's a learning ground. You are, like it or not, responsible to your parents. And parents, you're responsible to be their parent, not their buddy. God gave them friends. He just gave them one mom and dad. It's amazing to me that we now have warnings on TV that it's illegal for parents to give their teenage children alcohol. They want to be the cool parent. Want to be their bud. Be their parent. And sometimes when they need it, turn them upside down and wear out their hides. Amen? Hey, some of them even said it. And you're responsible not only to your parents, you're responsible to God. You see where he says, follow the intent of your heart and the desires of your eyes. He's not talking about running wild. He's talking about that youthful enthusiasm again. But it's a warning not to be sensual, but to be sensible. Because he follows it up with the phrase, we will stand before God. I ran across a little article. Listen carefully, especially those of you that are about to graduate. There's an individual up there ahead of you that you ought to know. He looks a lot like you. He walks like you, talks like you, has your nose, your chin, your eyes. Whether he respects or despises you, is miserable or happy, depends on you. You made him. He is you grown older. Third thing is recognize, boy, this will bless your heart, that you too are aging. You're getting older. Now, I know a lot of people don't spend a lot of time with the book of Ecclesiastes, but I want to do a little bit of interpretation for you. Beginning with verse 2, chapter 12, before the sun and the light, the moon and the stars are darkened, and clouds return after the rain. Dark all time. That is describing the gloominess of old age. That blesses your heart, doesn't it? In the day that the watchmen of the house tremble. You notice carefully some of these older folks, and you're going to see a shaking hand. Not hands shaking, a shaking hand. Tremble. The mighty men stoop. Some of these former athletes from years gone by are now all bent over and stooped over and walking with a cane. This is my favorite part. The grinding ones stand idle because they're few. Y'all know what that means? They got two teeth, one on top, one on the bottom. Oh, your day's coming when your teeth are going to rot and fall out. Bless God. Oh, then he says, look through the windows grown dim. Eyesight fades away. The doors on the street are shut as the ground of the grinding mill is low. You like Art Ross? Say what? Huh? You know, the hearing goes. But get this, and one will rise at the sound of the bird. Finally get to sleep, and the bird tweets. You can't hear it, thunder. But for some reason, when you go to sleep, everything wakes you up. And you can't go back to sleep. Even if you hear your phone's going off. Furthermore, it says they're afraid of high places and terror on the road. The latter part of verse 5 warns about a funeral, and that poetic about the silver cord is broken and the golden bowl is crushed. Death is coming. Oh my, we're going to grow old. I remember some real old folks, probably 40 or 50 years old. Talk about how life just, boy, goes by so rapidly. And I didn't believe them. And I shared with some of you a moment ago, it seems like just yesterday that I was over on Smith Mill Road taking Christian to enroll in kindergarten. And I thought, man, I'm supposed to have been through with that 20 years ago. And I kind of teared up. Maybe we've got our fingers crossed he's going to be a sophomore next year.